Everybody, this is Dream, and we have an absolutely monster slate today. I hope the sound is okay. I've been having issues with it all morning, but with that said, let's go ahead and get into the slate. Before I get started, though, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? It really helps the channel a lot. I really do appreciate it. With that said, let's get into our pitchers and this entire slate. First, I'm going to note that there are two weather issues here. Milwaukee, Baltimore has some issues, but it'll probably be fine there. The Yankees and Cleveland has a huge risk of being delayed or even postponed. So obviously we're going to have to keep a track of that later in the day. Our top stacks for this slate are Cincinnati, the Yankees, Atlanta, Texas, Houston, St. Louis, Arizona, and Arizona. We have a lot of good options from stackability. We also have a lot of good pitchers on this slate, so it's going to be a very diverse slate. I think that's going to be a super high scoring one because I do think we'll have several pitchers that exceed the 25 fantasy point range, and that will bode well for this slate. So let's go ahead and get into our top three pitchers. The first overall option is going to be Kevin Gausman. He's going to have one of the highest strikeout rates on the slate. He also faces Colorado away from Colorado, which gives him a lot of a boost here. His strikeout rate has not been ideal to start the season, but he usually is a pretty good strikeout pitcher, and Colorado is a team that will strike out a lot here, so he definitely has a lot of upside. Now, he only faced Colorado once last season. It wasn't great, but that game was at Colorado, so I think he's going to have a really good opportunity here to have a good game. Then we're going to look at Yamamoto for the Dodgers. Now, he started the season with a rough game against San Diego before the season started, but he's had two really great starts for the Dodgers against St. Louis and the Cubs, and he gets another favorable matchup here against San Diego. He's going to get a lot of strikeout opportunity here. I think he'll get in the 5 to 7 range in the strikeouts, maybe a little bit higher, hopefully. He's also one of the better pitchers on the slate in general, and he's going to have a lot of potential to have a solid game here. I don't expect too many earned runs for San Diego, so he definitely feels like a guy that can get over 25 fantasy points. Obviously, he's the second most expensive player on the slate, but that definitely he definitely has the upside, and he's got the good matchup. Then we'll look at Peralta. He's another one of the top three. He has fared well against Baltimore in the past. It is a tough matchup because Baltimore is playing well right now. But I do think he's going to have a good strikeout potential here. And last season against Baltimore in one game, he scored 21 fantasy points. I think he can definitely do something similar to that again, as he's going to have some nice opportunity here. And I don't expect him to give up too many home runs or anything. So I do think he's a great option, but he's definitely a contrarian off of the top two. We have several GPP options here today with Miller, Fried, Waka, Hoke, Detmers, and Abbott, all within the next price ranges here. All of these guys have a lot of potential today. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys here, and they are in pretty favorable matchups. If I was going to put them in order, I would put them in Miller, Fried, then I would put Detmers, Abbott, and then Hoke, and then Waka. I think that is probably the order that I would go with those guys, and they're all kind of GPP options on the slate. And so that while they do have some risk, there's a lot of potential in all those guys, and I do like them quite a bit. Once you get below that price point, we have three players that we can consider as kind of extreme GPP plays. One being Matz. He did have a good game against Arizona last season. However, I do think Arizona is a favorable stack today. Dunning for Texas is facing Houston, and he managed a pretty decent game against Houston the last time he played them earlier this year. However, that is a risky spot as Houston is dangerous. And then also Severino against Kansas City. He's fared well against Kansas City in the past, and while Kansas City has some pop to them sometimes, certain situations they can kind of be off, and this is a good situation for Severino to have a solid game. That will still be difficult for him to get a win, but those are extreme GPP plays, and they're definitely not must plays by any stretch of imagination. With that said, let's get into our bats here. So when we start looking at catcher, we do have some guys that have a lot of potential for home runs today, but the top overall guy is going to be Contreras from Cincinnati, or for St. Louis. Um, he has a lot of upside here. He has not hit the ball particularly great this season, but his fantasy output has been solid in some of the games. He's priced pretty fairly today, and he's got the best home run upside on the slate at the position. He's also a good value play from his price point, so that gives him a lot of upside. Obviously, William Contreras for Milwaukee also in play today. The home run upside is not quite there as it is for Wilson, but I do think William is a good solid option today and a good alternative, though he's a little bit more expensive and he would not be my first choice based on that point. But Logan O'Hope, let's see, um, Logan O'Hope for sorry if I'm butchering your name for the Angels has started the season extremely well. Good hitting so far. He hasn't put a lot of great fantasy games put together, but he is a good opportunity for a home run, and he's second best when it comes to home run metric for the slate. He doesn't have the best hitting upside, but he is in a good spot, and I do think he's a viable option. Two other options you could consider is Bo Naylor and Yanir Diaz, as they both have good home run pop. I really like Diaz today. I've liked him a lot this season so far, and so he's definitely worth the look. But they're both contrarian plays. For another value play, you could look at Keibert Ruiz for Washington if he draws a start, and Austin Wells for the Yankees. So moving into our first baseman, we are going to find some guys here that we like quite a bit. Obviously, Ohtani is going to be the top overall option. He's pretty much the top overall option every day he plays. He has been pretty solid to start the year. He's got good fantasy upside, though he's extremely expensive. And you can really get some good options that are cheap at this position, so it's not necessary to pay up a ton because we have Encarnacion Strand for Cincinnati. Now, he's really struggled to start the season, but the last couple of games against Milwaukee, he did okay and started to score some fantasy points. Obviously, prove here, but he's a good price point here, and he's got really good metrics for this game. One of the better home run potential guys at this position if this game plays, which there is that risk of it. Sorry, there is. Sorry, I'm thinking about Cleveland, not Cincinnati. But for Cincinnati, he's in a really good spot here. Now, this game is not at Great American Ballpark, but that won't matter too much for him as he's got good hitting metrics for this game, and he's got a lot of upside. I do like Christian Walker a lot today as well for Arizona. He's in a favorable matchup. He's hitting the ball pretty well. He's got good fantasy output, and he's pretty stable. He's a little bit pricey, but he's definitely a good home run potential today. Getting a little bit in that same price range, Goldschmidt and Berger both have some upside here, and also Bell for Miami. Though, if you wanted to get into a value play, Chanel for the Angels, and also Cronenworth for uh, San Diego would definitely be some contrarian options that I would use at this position. This position is pretty deep today. There's a lot of good opportunity for home runs, and so I do think it's going to be a pretty high scoring position. And so, but you don't have to pay up necessarily at that one. Looking at the second baseman, this is a little bit top heavy as it has been for a while, with Ozzy Albies being at the top for Atlanta. He's been hitting the ball very well to start the season. He's got home run potential today. He's got good hitting metrics, and overall, even though he doesn't have the highest home run upsides, he's in a good spot. And though his price would probably be the one detractor there, Ketel Marte has been absolutely great option for quite a few games, and he looks like he's got great metrics again today. Now, the home run upside is a little bit lower today based on where they're playing, but he has really good upside here, and he's got a good matchup, and I do think is a viable option for the expensive plays and a contrarian option off Albies. But I do like the several guys that are quite a bit cheaper than them, one being Jonathan India for Cincinnati. India has been pretty good at this against the White Sox before, and I do like his potential here again. Now, this isn't a Great American Ballpark, but it is at Chicago, and I think he's going to have a lot of upside in this matchup. He's also got decent home run potential today. If you just want a home run or bust, we're going to look at Nolan Gorman for St. Louis as kind of that guy. He's got the best home run metric for this position, but this position isn't always a home run upside kind of place, so you don't necessarily have to go to him. But he's definitely a viable option. And he's a little bit cheaper than Marte and Albies. Definitely a contrarian option. But if we want to get some other value plays, we could look at Gila for Oakland. We could look at Drury for the Angels, and then kind of a Hail Mary play would be Sosa for the Chicago White Sox. Looking at our third baseman, we have a lot to like at this position, especially some value plays. And while you can pay up for Austin Riley, who definitely feels like a great option on the slate, has a lot of home run upside today, and he's hit the ball pretty well, and he's been pretty good for fantasy so far. He's a little pricey, and we can get cheap real quick with Toro for Oakland. See, um, he's very cheap here at $2,700. he's been hitting the ball pretty well so far, and he's managed to score fantasy points in several games here in a row, which is really giving us a lot of upside potential here. The matchup is not bad for him either, and he's been one of the better players for this team, and so I do like his potential today. Arenado for St. Louis is also very interesting. He's a little bit cheaper than Riley, and he definitely draws some good upside here. He has not hit a home run yet this season, but he does draw home run metrics for the slate, so he's definitely worth a look. Jake Berger could also fill in at similar as Arenado with virtually the same price. But then if we want to get some other value plays, Rendon for Angels, Sosa again for the White Sox, going to be a Hail Mary play. Both have some utility today. I would even look at Dunn from Milwaukee as he's nice and cheap, and Sanyo for the Angels, if he was to draw the start, would have some interest to me at that third base position. Maybe the shortstops, we're going to start off by saying there's not a lot of home run upside at this position, despite the fact that there's a lot of opportunities here. The two expensive plays, and Bobby Witt and Corey Seager, both have the most home run upside at this position. Witt obviously has a stolen base upside as well. He's been absolutely phenomenal to start the season. He scored a ridiculous 49 fantasy points in the last game. I look for him to be another good opportunity here. He's hard to not roster based on how good he's playing. That said, he's not a must-play because there's plenty of good options at this position. Corey Seager is also hitting the ball very well. Now, he doesn't have the home runs that Witt does, but he has the home run upside today and the hitting upside that Witt does today. Of course, he doesn't come with the stolen base potential, but he is a good spot here and a good contrarian off of Witt. Several mid-level value plays here, and Abrams for Washington. He's got a very favorable matchup. He's been absolutely torching the ball for Washington despite nobody else on that team really doing much. He's got really good metrics for this game, and he probably has one of the better upsides of any player on the slate at the position. Volpe for the Yankees has also been fantastic to start the year, and I think he's a good option here, and he's nicely priced. If we want to go super cheap, we could look at Tim Anderson. I don't love Tim Anderson ever, so that is definitely a contrarian way to go. And also, but Willie Adames from Milwaukee is interesting as well. Kim for San Diego and Arcia for Atlanta will also be interesting plays. And even Wynn for St. Louis would have some Hail Mary potential. Looking at outfielders today, we're going to start with Acuna and Alvarez and Soto as the top three overall guys. I do think you want to try to fit in somebody. Now, Acuna has not had a home run yet, but he is getting a lot of stolen bases, which is helping. Lately, the last couple games, he had 3 in the one game. I think he's a good option today, and he's definitely worth a look. Looking at Alvarez here, Alvarez has absolutely fantastic home run upside again. He's been murdering the ball so far this season, and he's a great play. I would like Alvarez better than Acuna simply because of the price. But Soto has also been crazy good so far for the Yankees, and he's been fantasy royalty here. So I feel like you can't go wrong with any of those three today, but they have a lot of good potential. Looking at value plays here, or at least mid-level plays, Brendan Donovan for St. Louis looks like a great option today. He's got good home run metrics for this one and great hitting metrics, one of the best hitting metrics I've seen for the slate. I also like Ozuna again for Atlanta. Now his price has come down a couple $100, which is definitely helpful, and he's been hitting the ball extremely well, and so he's in a good spot again. I also like Benson for Cincinnati. He's going to have a lot of potential, and he's going to be interesting because of his price, though he's been a little bit inconsistent lately. I also think that Lane Thomas, George Springer, Duran for Boston, Nemo, Hop, Marte, Walker, Martini, and then Steer. Not Steer. Newt Bar for St. Louis. All have a lot of good potential. I also like a Duvall if he starts, and Fraley if he starts for their respective teams. And then Nelson Velasquez at $37 is one of my favorite value plays, as is Grichuk for Arizona. So overall, this slate has a lot of opportunity to have a lot of good players, and there's a lot of different ways you can stack these games up. I will reiterate my stacks again. We have the Yankees, Cincinnati, Atlanta, Texas, Houston, St. Louis, and Arizona. And the big weather concern is the New York Yankee-Cleveland game. Obviously, if that New York Yankee-Cleveland game was to be called, that would definitely kind of limit some of the stacks a little bit and would help us be a little bit more concise. But overall, with so many games on the slate, it's going to be hard to, you're going to have to take some chances, figuring out which teams are going to be the most stackable. I'm definitely playing big today. I'm going to be playing a lot of different lineups because I'm going to be stacking up different teams. But the players that I mentioned are going to be the guys that I'm going to, especially for one-off situations, that I'm going to fit in certain places. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing.